asking you to like, subscribe, and share. Dave needs this.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
We are loaded up today. Who falls behind in the SEC in this new free-flowing NIL era that Tennessee and the state of Tennessee has basically enacted into action? So also, who does Nico Iamaleava remind you of? That'll be brought to you by our friends at Banks and Jones, T. Scott Jones, represented by Banks and Jones. Steve Spurrier criticizes Billy Napier, basically saying he's a bozo. And then this is a tough one, but something we want to get into. Should Pat Summitt carry more of the blame for the Lady Vols' downfall? We'll discuss that with John Adams, who joins us on a Tuesday. Rick Barnes' biggest test of the year, maybe of his Tennessee tenure, coming up. We'll discuss that. And Arch Manning opts out of the EA Sports game. My, oh my, that Manning family doesn't mind getting attention. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
I am good. How are you doing, Dave?
Well, let's go ahead and get into it and bring John Adams in right now. John, you're looking fantastic. Very red this morning, or perhaps that's Clemson-esque. Which would you call it?
I would call it a bad sunburn from Sunday afternoon is what I would call it.
I did see you on Sunday afternoon, and you had been out in the sun a little bit at the baseball game. Do they not have boxes anymore, or what's going on with that?
It's no, I was out with some friends in the left field porch, and tactical error. I forgot that doxycycline, an antibiotic, makes you more sensitive to the sun. And when you saw me, you probably thought you just landed on Mars, didn't you?
I thought you had been through some sort of extensive treatment of some sort. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah. It's all good, though.
You look fantastic now. It is all good. Let's go ahead and get started with today's tough question. First, Caleb, let me ask, how are you, sir?
Well, actually, Dave, it's okay. You actually did ask me how I am this time. John, he always remembers how to ask me how I am when you're on. It's when Jimmy's on that he forgets.
Yeah, I get intimidated by Jimmy. That's what it is, basically.
Yeah, they worked at the same radio station, and let's see, how can I put this? Dave was sort of an underling in those days. He was not the big star he has become, and I think he was, as he admits, intimidated by Jimmy Hines.
Maybe a little. Lord. Today's tough question.
But I think that's been a motivational factor. Dave kept telling himself, "I'm going to show him. I'll show him all one day." And now look at him.
Yeah, I mean, really, John, you don't know it, but you and Jimmy are sort of this weird combination of father figure thing. Maybe that's what it is, and I'm just trying to live up to your guys' expectations. How about that?
I think that's very sad.
This tough question is sad too for some SEC schools. Here we go.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
John Adams brought this up. Which of the SEC teams just simply, probably, most likely can't compete in this free-flowing NIL era that the state of Tennessee has opened up because they sued the NCAA? So let me start with you as we set up the question, and then I want to ask John. It's our official poll question as well. Today's tough question. Where are we now on that, Caleb? Where do we want to go in that direction? What schools do we want to name on the YouTube channel where we would certainly suggest that people vote and hit the like and subscribe button?
So, which SEC school won't be able to compete in free-flowing NIL era? And the answers are Vanderbilt, Missouri, Mississippi State and other, post below if it's other. Well, I don't think it's a hard guess which one is just cleaning house of those four. Just absolutely cleaning up. In terms of
John,
being
do
unable to
you
compete.
want to guess which school is cleaning house in not having NIL money? I love the way he put that.
When I think about Vanderbilt, and they're supposedly
How do you know it was
allegedly.
Vanderbilt?
No, we didn't say it was Vanderbilt yet, John. What are you doing?
Huh? I thought you wanted.
It is.
It is Vanderbilt, John. You were absolutely right, but
Sorry, I was thinking about those, how they are renovating the stadium there, and they've got the cranes in the background. What they should do is take those cranes and just take the stadium down and just pull the whole thing off and just eliminate it. No, Vanderbilt. I mean, well, I don't know why we are even discussing Vanderbilt. There's no question it can't compete.
Yep. So
You can't compete in any era, under any rules.
Here's who we have on the board right now. We've got Vanderbilt, Missouri, and Mississippi State. And that's what Caleb and I came up with this morning. So Vanderbilt clearly with 82% of the vote. Which SEC schools can't compete in the free-flowing NIL era? What do you think of our other selections, Missouri and Mississippi State?
Yeah, I agree with that. However, if you have some success, which Missouri's experienced right now, you never know when that might spark a windfall from donors. But just on the face, I would say no. I mean, and certainly not Mississippi State. I also wonder about Kentucky and South Carolina. I mean, think how long they've been in the second division of the SEC for the most part. It's we're doing away with those divisions now. But when you look back on the SEC starting in 1992, Kentucky's never played in the SEC championship game. And if boosters there, if they're going to invest in something in NIL money, it's going to be Kentucky basketball, not football. So I think Kentucky will struggle. And I'm South Carolina. I mean, would you want to spend money on South Carolina football?
Not currently. No, I would not. I would want to spend money on Florida football currently. So there is a flux, Caleb, of these teams can go in and out of vogue. But as far as the standbys, it feels like to me that Vanderbilt, Missouri, and Mississippi State are kind of in their own category. You?
Yeah, I understand what John is saying about Kentucky and South Carolina, but I feel like I see a lane for them to actually be able to compete because, and I get what John says about basketball, but I do believe in the NIL era, a rising tide is going to lift all boats to a certain degree because if a lot is spent on basketball, that's going to generate a lot more revenue to come in, and their fans do show up for football games. Now, let's remember as we're talking about this, fan support matters more than ever because whatever money the school generates from attendance, they don't have to solicit from donors, at which point donors can use that money on NIL to ink athletes on third-party deals or whatever. And I'll say this for Kentucky and South Carolina fans, they show up for football games. And if they have any decent product, they actually show up. Kentucky shows up pretty impressively for a basketball school for football games.
Hey, Caleb, can I piggyback off something you said? I want to ask John about this. Today's tough question brought to you by our friends today at BetUS. College basketball betting home marches here. Get 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000 and a 10% gambler's insurance. The link is right below. Make sure you use that so we get credit for that. Again, that's BetUS. The link is right below. 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2K. John, something that Caleb just said, the rising water raises all boats or whatever that is.
Rising tide lifts all boats in NIL, yeah.
Exactly. Rising tide and stuff. So that's true. But what's the window? How long do you give a South Carolina or Kentucky? Let's assume Vanderbilt's out of the discussion, but how long do you give a South Carolina, Kentucky, Mississippi State to say I'm worthy of being a part of your 40 to 50 team mega conference? I'm good. Don't worry about me. Just let me be lifted by that rising tide or whatever Caleb called it. I mean, what's that window look like to you, John? Who can somebody turn themselves into a true NIL competitor because they have more money coming in theoretically from NIL boosters and television?
I think the SEC will always look after its own, and the SEC is the power player here. And it's always been based on it's not there's never been equity in the conference. There are some schools that had to get by with less, much less donor based. So I think that, but the SEC prides itself on tradition, and it prides itself on rivalries. Now, admittedly, some of that has changed, but I still think it wants to keep that. I mean, the SEC, I don't think it cares if some programs are always down.
Well, in a way, they have to be, John, so you can win an easy game or two.
Yeah, but I just think we've seen it. I don't think that will change in the NIL. I think the SEC will carry these schools along. I think it will carry Vanderbilt along.
Okay, so this is interesting. So, Caleb, let me turn this on you. So, John is suggesting that these schools will be in trouble. They'll be incredibly below average for the remainder of their existence, but the SEC won't boot them. I was thinking that it might be a boot thing. Caleb, how do you view this?
It won't be that the SEC boots them. It will be that once this SEC Big Ten alliance happens, that we all see is inevitably happening, where all the top schools join and forces into one super league. Schools are going to break off from that to form a super league, and there will be no conference, or there will be no, I don't think there's going to be an SEC or a Big Ten in 10, 15 years. I think it's going to be one super league with a bunch of the top teams from all the conferences.
Okay, hit that like or subscribe if Caleb just said something hot, because he did. So basically, Caleb just said Vanderbilt will one day rule its own conference, John. Caleb didn't really say
I tell you what, yeah, that Southland Conference can be pretty competitive at times.
I think we're talking about, in this new era, as conferences keep getting bigger and bigger, if the SEC and Big Ten form some alliance, at some point conferences are just going to be arbitrary, and there's going to be no point for them. You might as well just have like one super league, negotiate the TV deal, and then just the teams schedule their rivals how they see fit, and then you kind of rotate 3 or 4 random games outside of that, and then just do a schedule strength for the top whatever to play a playoff. I mean, there's really no point for conferences to exist in 10 years if they keep going down this eat or be eaten philosophy. I mean, and so I just don't. The only reason they would is because Greg Sankey and Tony Batiti want to have jobs, and so I think that at that point, I don't think the SEC is going to kick out Vanderbilt. I think you're going to see the Tennessees and Alabamas and the Michigans and Ohio States leave the SECs and Big Tens and form their own super league and just not invite Vanderbilt with them.
No SEC. Paris Hilton, what do you say?
That's hot.
That is a hot take. John, could you see in your lifetime no SEC?
No.
In my lifetime?
Possibly.
In Caleb's lifetime?
I mean, guys.
In Caleb's unborn child's lifetime.
John, you have already lived through
the
era. You have already lived through the era where the Ivy League stopped being the dominant football conference. There was a time when the Ivy League was the SEC.
Yeah, I know. And General Neyland's defense has shut out a lot of opponents too. I can remember some of those shutouts. But I think what they want, I think what the SEC and Big Ten want, they want a super conference without calling it a super conference.
Right. They don't want to call it. Yes, they don't.
They
want
to say we're the SEC. I just think that way they keep their jobs. It's the whole thing when you start talking about, the SEC is going to get 8 buys to the championship game. The other conferences don't get by. The SEC will have 5 automatic qualifiers. It's just going to be so slanted toward the SEC and Big Ten. And I don't know if they'll turn on one another eventually. I could see that possibly occurring. So I think they have it. I think the way they have it, where they're headed right now, maybe temporarily, but this would be ideal for them. They can set up, hey, we're all about the growth of college football and the game itself. And we want to be fair to everybody. So we'll let them play in our super conference. But they won't be able to advance as far or with as many in the playoff.
Relegation thing. Portions of today's tough question brought to you by our friends at Boundless Moving. From a 2-hour minimum to turnkey operations, they have you covered. That's who I use. Their motto, personal service without limits. It's not just a tagline. It's part of who they are. It's in their DNA. In North Carolina as well. Boundless Moving. Give them a call. Get a quote. Do yourself a favor. So we can go ahead and say Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, and Missouri, but which one of, I'm going to call them the real schools, should be concerned about a free-flowing NIL? The show represented by Banks & Jones. Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. The one established program that should be worried about this free-flowing NIL era is Ole Miss. Because if they don't have a Lane Kiffin, John, I want to start with you, and then Caleb, I want to get your take. If they don't have a Lane Kiffin that's going to work boosters tirelessly, that's going to work transfers tirelessly, then I'm not sure there's enough money to keep them at an upper level. So I wanted to pick one team that wasn't a state, that wasn't an addition, that wasn't Vanderbilt. John, what do you think of Ole Miss?
Oh yeah, if you look at the history of Ole Miss, certainly that's true. I mean, it's had a few ups, but it's had a lot of downs, and you can go back to in its heyday. Johnny Vaught was a coach in the late 50s, early 60s. It was a power. It hasn't been that since, but Lane Kiffin has revived it and done more than I thought anybody could there. But I think that's true. It's not just true of Ole Miss. It's true of a lot of schools. It may mean more the coach
that have been reinvigorated.
Yeah. I mean, the coach is so important because that changes everything. If you have a coach you believe in, but if you don't have a coach at Alabama, a coach that you believe in, the revenue, the NIL money will slow down. Is it a good investment or a bad investment? So, yeah, I think it matters more to a place like Ole Miss, but that's where. So Ole Miss probably can't pay Lane Kiffin enough because he means so much. When you talk about most valuable coach in the SEC, you can make a strong case that it's Lane Kiffin.
Yep. Elias says the NIL stuff, Caleb, I want to get to you. The NIL stuff really benefits schools that don't have major competitors in their market, such as a Knoxville would be a prime example, Caleb. And I think that is Knoxville's. It's a Tennessee one-horse town. We all know that.
Yeah, well, location is still a thing in recruiting. I will say that, having still covering it a little bit. So it's why, to me, there are a couple of schools. LSU and Ohio State really are the two schools where, I mean, I think any of us three could coach those schools and maybe win a national championship over 5 years and not have to do anything that special because you can just talent falls into your backyard at those two schools. Every other
John and I could have won an SEC title in Atlanta in December of 2001. I'm aware of that. Would you have coached the defense or the offense in that game? And which unit would have left me with, Dave? You can have it. It's called Squeeze the Rock and Stop the Draw. That's what it's called.
My gosh, I saw. It's so funny I'll say that because I actually saw on the there's an SEC Rewind segment on that game and Jimmy Hyams of all people is on it because Nick Saban tried to very nicely in a Nick Saban way say, I was shocked at how incompetent Tennessee's coaching staff was. That's not what he said. He said, we had a change of pace, and they just weren't prepared for our new offense. And they come right to Jimmy, and Jimmy's like, it's a quarterback draw. How much adjustment do you have to do to prepare for a quarterback draw?
Yeah, I mean, it catches you off guard one time, but then after that,
maybe twice, but not the third time. All right, John came up with this topic last night. Who does Nico Iamaleava remind you of? So now that everybody has had a chance to see him in a bowl game, let's do some projection. Mine was actually stolen. I don't know if it was on purpose, but it was stolen. It was a taller Bryce Young. And I think that's because he keeps his eyes downfield. I think that he is going to be more apt to err on the side of staying behind the line of scrimmage to throw, as opposed to going beyond it to run. I think he has very good pocket presence. A taller Bryce Young was my comparison from way, way back. It's gotten picked up by some other people since, but that's fine. I'm not bitter at all. But John, who would be your comparison?
You sound extremely bitter.
I'm very bitter, very angry.
That's okay. There's nothing wrong with a little bitterness. That will probably motivate you to even greater heights than you've already attained.
I think it was Rage Against the Machine. It was Rage Against the Machine that said anger is a gift.
Oh, okay. Well, happy gift. I will go. I tell you, and let's be sure to point out, we're not saying he's going to be as good as any of these guys. He's got to go do it on the field. We've seen one start from him, but he reminded me of in the bowl game of Johnny Manziel, like a taller Johnny Manziel, just making plays all over the field, and his instincts. Because things went awry with Johnny Manziel, there's no pro career to look at. But if you go back and look at what he did at A&M, what he accomplished there, as much as any quarterback that's played in the SEC, he was so exciting, and he lifted a team past other teams that had much more talent. But he was to me, an instinctive player of knowing when to run, where to run, when to throw it. And also, I think that Nico has that gift, and that's based on one game. And he's certainly not physically built like Manziel. Manziel was kind of stocky compared to Nico, had very strong legs. But the way Nico played in that bowl game, to me, he looked like a guy that can just, when everything goes wrong with a play, he can still make it right. And there aren't many guys that can do that. And we've seen Bryce Young could do that, and Johnny Manziel could do it.
Caleb, I think we forget how great Johnny Manziel was at times because he liked to do an 8-ball instead of Wheaties for breakfast.
Yeah.
Don't we forget how I remember I was talking to John about this. I remember interviewing Ron Higgins about it. This is the greatest playmaker since. And Archie Manning came up. We have forgotten, since Johnny Manziel became a regular at Vegas and lost 80 pounds, that he was incredible in college. That is a heck of a compliment by John Adams.
Yeah. I still to this day find it disgraceful that he wasn't great in the NFL. I said yesterday, I can deal with quarterbacks who are bust because they have, demons, or they're fighting some things, or they went to the wrong franchise. Like, I give Ryan Leaf a break because I think Ryan Leaf was dealing with a lot, and then he went to the worst possible franchise you could go to. And I think that made things worse. I think it's disgraceful when the only thing I can't forgive is when a quarterback doesn't care that he's a bust and just collects a check. So to me, Johnny Manziel and Jamarcus Russell are the two greatest disgraces of human beings in the history. Like, on the field, okay. They didn't do anything illegal off the field. They didn't harm anybody off the field. But we
didn't get any mention of Hitler or Mussolini there.
No. I mean, as far as athletes go, the most disgraceful thing you can do is be that good and then collect a check and go home and not even care. And I would never give them a second shot in the NFL. I hope Jamarcus Russell blew all his money because that was disgraceful what he did.
Slightly
And-
off topic. Who does Nico remind you of? Caleb's answer brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Promo code HOOK for 10% off. You can't pick Bryce Young. You can't pick Johnny Manziel.
With Nico, there is almost nobody I can name because you're right. Bryce Young is the closest, but I've never seen somebody like him. So I'm actually going to go. I'm going to go with the guy that was just at Tennessee 2 years ago, Hendon Hooker. That's the closest I could get to Nico, probably. And it's not a great comparison, but they both have pretty touch. They both have great touch. They're quick decision makers. They knew what to do in the pocket. Nico has just got a better arm.
I think, John, that Nico is better. Hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't to this point. We really appreciate that. John, I think that Nico is better in every regard. Not to knock, Caleb, your Hendon Hooker comparison. I'm really not. I think there's some apt comparisons there. But I think he's better in every regard other than dropping that deep ball in there, which I haven't seen enough of. But I thought Hendon Hooker was pretty especial with that.
Yeah, he was. The thing about Nico as opposed to Hooker, one thing, and Hooker was certainly a great Tennessee quarterback, and I hope he does well in the NFL. He didn't look smooth a lot of times when he ran, and I'm not saying that had anything to do with his knee injury, but his gait looked a little different. Nico looks very smooth, very fluid when he runs, and I noticed that with Hendon Hooker. And I was thinking when I first watched Hendon Hooker, I thought, man, there's something a little awkward with his running style, even though he runs well and he has a great sense of when to run, when to leave the pocket. I thought, man, he might be vulnerable to injury. And he never was till right there at the end. And hopefully he will have an injury-free NFL career. But I just think Nico looks so smooth. Nico makes it look easy what he's doing, and what he's doing is anything but easy. When I go back, and I know they were just short touchdown runs in that bowl game against Iowa, but as dreadful as Iowa's offense was, that was a pretty good defense. And I know it was missing a star player, but still a pretty good defense. And he just scored with such ease. He knew just where to go, and it was almost like he just kind of rolled into the end zone. It was it was as though it looked effortless. And some of the great athletes can do that. And that's why one of the reasons I'm so sold on him being a great quarterback.
John, this goes before mine and Caleb's time, but somebody on the message board said Tony Robinson. Do you see a comparison there? I barely remember him playing in that 85 Auburn game.
Yeah, I was a columnist in Jacksonville when I first saw Tony Robinson. I didn't see enough of him though. But again, I didn't think of, I mean, great arm. He could run, but I don't think he could run the way Nico can. And that, I say that again, emphasizing that I didn't see that much of him, but I haven't seen that much of Nico either. But when I saw Tony Robinson for the first time, I didn't think, I mean, it's a really good quarterback, great passer, great arm, an NFL quarterback. But with Nico, what I see is somebody with these, again, that makes things that are not easy look easy.
What about Heath Schuler, guys?
I almost went there.
You know, I think of Heath Schuler as being somewhere maybe in between a Nico and a Tim Tebow. Heath Schuler was a powerful runner. Guy was extremely strong, a great athlete, great arm. So, and of course, Tebow, you know, ran over linebackers with regularity. So I would have loved to have seen Heath Schuler in the kind of offense Tennessee runs now. I think he would have been spectacular. I think he could have won a Heisman Trophy in that offense.
Yeah, I've told Heath this before, and I stole it from Mike Strange. I would have liked to have seen him be a decathlete. I think he would have won the decathlon. Just an all-around crazy good athlete. I think he picks up a javelin and throws it like at a world top of length, whatever that would be called.
Yeah. Yeah, he just walks over there and said, "Oh, what's this?"
Oh.
Boom.
Yeah, there he goes.
Somebody dies. Somebody dies 200 yards away.
It's funny you say that, John, because there was a string of, the 90s had Heath Shuler, Peyton Manning, and T. Martin. And of those three, and Josh Heupel, and not in the NFL, but in Josh Heupel's offense, Peyton Manning is probably the worst fit of the three, funny enough.
Can I say something really quick about the Heath Shuler comparison? Go ahead, John.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say this real quick. Nico is going to be asked to process at a much quicker and higher level than Heath Shuler was ever asked to. I just want to lay that out there. You can go with that where you would like to. John?
No, I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I don't. You had something else you want to say, right?
No, when you're talking about Peyton Manning would be the worst fit, though. Peyton Manning was so good. No, he wasn't a runner, but he was so good in many other ways that I think I just think he would have still excelled in this offense. You would have run it differently. He didn't always. Josh Heupel, you go back to his coordinator days. He didn't always have a great runner at quarterback.
Yeah,
that's true.
Drew Lock was not a great runner, but he liked somebody that can stretch the field, and of course Peyton could stretch the field, accurate on everything, on the deep ball, whatever. So, yeah, he would have been pretty successful. But ideally, what you're looking for is a great passer and a great runner in this offense.
Kaylin mentioned Joe Milton on the message board with the javelin. Yes, Joe Milton probably would have won the decathlon when he was 12 years old, John. Don't you think that would have been
well, okay, the throwing part, I mean, I think he could have handled a discus okay. High jump. Heath Shuler was a championship high jumper, as I recall.
I'm telling you. When it comes
a great
to
athlete, I would bet if you put Joe Milton and Heath Shuler out there in a decathlon, I would bet on Heath Shuler. I can't think of anybody at UT I would have put above Heath Shuler in a decathlon. He could run fast. I don't know how he would have done on the distances, but he's an incredible athlete. But you got me thinking, though. Imagine what's a record for the javelin? What would be a great javelin throw?
I'm gonna have to go to Caleb.
I don't. What do you guys think I know?
Well, I used to follow track, but
yeah. And while you're doing that, I'll remind you that Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler. Looking for affordable game day jewelry. They got the Fire Opals. That's a Tennessee tradition. RickTerryJewelry.com. RickTerryJewelry.com. Check out those Fire Opals. They're awesome.
The record is 104.8 meters. So
I would say that.
Come on, let's don't do meters.
Well, that we can just do. That's 316 feet, basically.
Okay.
Well, actually, hold on. That's wrong. That's wrong. Someone was wrong when they said that.
Which one?
The actual recorded record is 323 feet.
Well, then I was pretty close.
98.48 meters.
Okay. So
all right, 323 feet. Okay. So how about this? Imagine it like Old West style gunfight. Joe Milton and Heath Shuler separated by 100 yards. One in the football field and the other. Okay, gentlemen, go for your javelin. And each of them has about 5 javelins there to throw. And they take turns throwing javelins at each other.
I'm just going to say this, though. I think there, and Dave knows more, because Dave, you guys are covering this more than I have when it happened. Didn't Joe... I think Joe Milton accidentally broke Jeremy Banks' jaw last year.
Yeah,
he was just trying to get him out of the way.
I covered a camp, John, that okay, so I'm just going to describe this really quickly. So you're at the 50-yard line and you run all of your passes towards the goal line so that you can run 2 passing drills at the same time. Does that make sense to everybody? So you're essentially at the 45 or so and you're running towards the end zone, away from each other, right? I covered a camp that the 2 players came in together. They started at the goal line and they met at the 50, and it cost one guy good portion of the frontal lobe of his brain.
Jeez.
Yeah. So we don't want to throw javelins at each other, do we?
Well, I don't know. I think you'd draw a crowd.
All right. 2 minutes. Steve Spurrier basically says, Billy Napier, you can't coach. You're absolutely terrible. You're horrendous. 2 minutes, and I'm going to explain all of that to you with Caleb Calhoun and John Adams. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
We believe every day is a good day to be thirsty. With free samples on draft and lots of flavors to choose from, Tennessee Cider Company prepares a hard cider that's easy to enjoy. Some say it's the signature cider of the South. Others say it's the cure to your craving. They all say you'll savor every sip. The area of Gatlinburg has so much to offer, and so does Tennessee Cider Company. Add us to your list for shopping and fun experiences. You'll be glad you made the trip. Find our cidery in the Mountain Mall on the Gatlinburg Parkway. Sip smart. Sip the good stuff. Sip Tennessee Cider Company. Thirsty yet? Doors open at 10 a.m.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
People having some fun on the message board. If Heath Schuler and Joe Milton were going to throw a javelin at somebody, I'd rather, if they were going to throw it at me, it'd be Milton, which is essentially questioning his accuracy. John, thoughts?
I know. And another wrote, Milton would win the distance because he would throw it over his head.
Caleb, thoughts?
I mean, y'all are right. That's absolutely true. Like, I'd be more like if Milton was. Whose arm would I rather hit me? I'd rather it be Heath's probably, although I'd like neither. But if both are aiming for me, I'll take my chances with Milton because I think he'll miss.
In that scenario, where would be the worst place you could possibly be would be behind Heath Schuler.
That's right. Otherwise, if you're Heath, you're just having a cup of coffee, maybe smoking a cigarette, chilling out, nothing really going on. All is good. So just be a part of the fun. That's what you need to do. City Heating and Air Conditioning, 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. Don't trust a fly-by-night HVAC company to tell you that you need a new unit that could cost you thousands or more. cityheatandair.com, cityheatandair.com. Let's go around the SEC where Steve Spurrier criticizes Billy Napier. Welcome to the club. What did he say, Caleb Calhoun? I thought Billy Napier was supposed to be so detail-oriented that details would just win itself and it'd be detail crazy in Gainesville and details to be winning championships because he's detail-oriented. That's all I heard. But apparently, he's not detail-oriented at all.
Well, According to Steve Spurrier, this is a quote from him. This is a direct quote. You guys tell me if this is a criticism of Napier, because I think it's very clearly a criticism of Billy Napier. He said,
Answer's hell yeah, John.
and I'm not going to do the Spurrier impression because I can't. But he said, there's a feeling around the Gators of what the heck are we doing? There's a lot of questions that I don't have the answers to about organization. Just because you hire the most people doesn't mean you're going to win. All these extra people, I question how much that really helps. Billy is a good guy who works his tail off. I like Billy. Good family man. But we do wish the organization was a little bit more tidy.
Good family man.
He's a salt of the earth guy. Yeah.
That's one of our favorite scenes, John. Good family man. Bleep you, go home and hug your kids. Are you a salesman or not? John, that's Alec Baldwin. This is Steve Spurrier throwing Billy Napier under the bus.
And then backing over him. But you know what? When Caleb was reading that quote, and he's talking, just this massive army. Remember when Billy Napier was hired, and it was all the people that were bringing with him. So when I picture this in my mind, I think of just all these people bumping into each other, and they're in cubicles, and they can't get out of each other's way. And there's too many people. It's the ultimate bureaucracy, and nothing can get done.
Yes, and detail-oriented, Caleb, the guys can't figure out which key goes to which office.
Yeah, but didn't he get this from, I just want to name the name because I did my deep dive, Dave, and you know this, you helped me out with it on what made Nick Saban so successful. And didn't he get that from Nick Saban? I mean, Nick Saban has how many analysts and how many cooks in the kitchen? And it works for him.
But John, it's funny that Caleb brings this up because Caleb, I want to do this for a whole separate topic, but you have a situation I think is unique with Nick Saban because he can call a Butch Jones, and we can all make fun of a Butch Jones, but he was a head coach at a major university, and that's your analyst. Who do you call if you're Billy Napier to be your analyst? Bob, who you just met at the convenience store?
Yeah, on the way out the door, you might say, hey, Bob, what are you doing the rest of the day?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Saban rehab thing was an anomaly. I don't think that's going to be the case with Kirby Smart or anybody else ever.
I know, but you had it exactly right. You want to rehabilitate your career, you go work for Nick Saban. So he got Steve Sarkisian comes off his drunken binge in LA, signs up with Saban. He's good to go. Lane Kiffin's had some issues. He's fired in an airport. Goes to Nick Saban. It's all good. So yeah, Nick Saban got some of the brightest coaches in the country. Billy Napier, who are his quality control guys?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, Caleb. If Nick Saban calls, I'm like, oh yeah, I would do this for $24,000 a year.
Yeah.
Instead of make a couple $100,000 because of my buyout. If Billy Napier calls, I'm gonna say, honey, tell him I'm not home.
I mean, should Butch Jones have ever been anything more than a quality control coach, though?
Arguably, I was actually told by somebody on that staff that he actually contributed more to the offense than you would think. And I'm not a big Butch Jones guy, but
I'm not buying that, Dave.
I will say Butch Jones, remember, was a protege of Rich Rodriguez, so he understood zone read concepts and was one of the first people to understand zone read concepts on zone blocking concepts on runs.
He tried to run it with Justin Worley.
He did, and Quentin Dormady, and he did.
Come on.
Go ahead.
I wanted to get back to Napier real quick because, John, I know that you had I don't want to say, of all three of us, you probably had the closest relationship to Steve Spurrier over the years. I know you spoke to him a good bit.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Typically, Spurrier doesn't even try to be PC with his quotes, though. Was he trying to be PC here and he still couldn't help himself and just accidentally nuked Billy Napier?
Yeah. I mean, he's trying to say, hey, but he's a great family man, good guy, works his tail off. Yeah, it was almost as though Steve's saying this, and then he's saying, oh, I better I better say something nice here. I don't want it to sound too. Yeah, but I don't think Steve can help you. That's just who Steve is. He's calling it like he sees it. And I think when Billy Napier came there, I think Spurrier was, was all in. He wants Florida to be successful. He wants South Carolina to be successful because he coached there too. But I just think my guess is when Spurrier saw these army of analysts and whatever, all these people, I mean, they had like 15 nutritionists, whatever, sleep studies coach like Butch Jones.
I didn't know all this, John. Give us a little bit more background if you can. So they've got like a ton of coaches.
What, in Florida?
Yes, I didn't.
Yeah, they just hired a lot of people, and it was Butch Jones did come to mind because Butch Jones had a sleep specialist working with his players on here's how you sleep well. And then some sleepwalk through the game. And so it didn't really work out for them. But no, Steve would not go for all that kind of stuff. He's probably thinking, man, why do you need all these people? You just go out there and you see a weakness there at cornerback and you get your best receiver on him and boom, it's a touchdown. It was simple for Steve. He didn't need a bunch of people around him.
Well, let me ask you both this. Does this statement in and of itself hurt Billy Napier? Brought to you by Don Self of Chattanooga, State Farm agent Don Self. Go to donself.net or call 423-396-2126. 40 years in business, greater Chattanooga area. Donself.net, donself.net right below. Again, I'm telling you that everybody wants to save money, but when you make your claim, customer service is important. So, Caleb, let me ask you this, and John, I'll turn to you and ask you the same question. The statement in and of itself, which is a veiled way of saying Billy Napier, the current Florida coach, may be an idiot.
Yeah.
Is that damaging in and of itself? No matter if it's true, just the fact that Steve Spurrier is saying it.
Oh, yeah.
I will say, I'll let John go first. Yeah.
Well, no, it's just, yeah, that's like, he's the guy at Florida. And for him to say that, because what makes it magnifies it is that Spurrier is usually complimentary to coaches at Florida. Everybody knows he's pulling for Florida to do well. He's behind the Gators. So when he said, he's basically saying this isn't working. That's just the final straw, I think, on Billy. Billy Napier's gone. He's still there, but he's gone.
Yeah, John, I feel the same way, and I think if I know this, and you know this because you've covered him over the years, I'm sure Florida Gator Nation knows it better than anybody that Spurrier's first reaction to something is usually the truest thing that's ever said. Like, I remember it was about 10 years ago when he was at South Carolina, and Jadeveon Clowney was coming out for a draft, and Spurrier was asked about Clowney's work ethic, and his first comment was, it was okay. It wasn't like Marcus Lattimore's or anything, but it was okay. And then he had to walk it back later. But he was right. Clowney didn't have much of a work ethic in the NFL.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Spurrier's the guy who I guarantee when Jerry Spurrier is getting ready in the morning and Jerry Spurrier, if she has an unflattering outfit on, Steve will accidentally tell her, you don't look good in that outfit. And then he'll try to cover its tracks later and be like, okay.
I've been around her some. I don't think he would say that.
You don't think
John,
let me ask
you both this, guys. So it does damage, no question. If you're somebody in Gainesville or Florida and you're hearing about Steve Spurrier, who does a weekly show with a friend of the program, Pat Dooley. So you're doing a weekly show and you have some say as to the feeling within the program of Billy Napier. Does he make this comment without having a pretty good feeling, John, that Billy Napier's out the door, as you said earlier?
That's a good point. I mean, he probably sees the end of this movie. He's seen it. He knows where this is headed.
I think he
also knows.
I think he's had somebody tell him it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, I mean, Steve wants. I mean, at the end of the day, Steve wants to be on the winning side.
Yeah,
and that's not Billy Napier's side.
Good family man. Go home and hug your kids.
Yeah.
Winning in the swamp. Always be closing.
Yeah. You can drive home in your Hyundai. Okay.
That's right.
I'll drive home in my BMW.
But guys, is this?
You know what we're referring to? The Alec Baldwin and Glengarry Gross, Caleb?
No,
Caleb.
I don't.
I'll
Guys,
share
stop
with you.
age shaming me.
Yeah, we are age shaming.
I mean, well, guys, we do have to be honest. Though he is a good guy, and we know Florida's history proves that they care about character more than winning. Okay, they.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up, Caleb, because that almost slipped, and that would have been irresponsible for me not to point out how Florida's family first. Always have been, always will be. I think
they're very Christian with Tim Tebow, and
I think that was very, very proven there. Yeah, there's no question about it. You can be a John, not a John Adams, but you can be a member of Hooker's Corner. All you have to do is sign up, and I will put the. You like that, John?
Man, how far are you going to carry that?
You can be a John. There it is. Go ahead.
I don't know if that's not going to end up any better than Billy Napier just looking down the road at that day, that theme.
You don't think that'll look any better? Okay. All right. So we've got can you delete that off? I put the wrong thing in there. Okay. I don't know. You don't want to know. We have a major announcement. We're going to go ahead and go ahead.
I can't delete it. I think you're just stuck with it.
Okay, fine. We'll just be stuck with it. We have a major announcement. We're going to be giving away an autographed Brew McCoy helmet at the end of the month. It is pretty awesome. I'll pull up a picture of it just in a little bit, and you'll be able to see it, and you can win weekly prizes. We'll have a T-shirt and some good TriStar Company hats to give away as well, as you can see that right up there. You can also go to the website offthehooksports.com and purchase the book, or you can get hooked up with an NCAA versus the state of Tennessee t-shirt. But join Hooker's Corner, just $9.98, John, a month. It's pretty affordable, and you can win great prizes and get inside recruiting info. You can't beat that. All right, this one's a little tough, and we like John because he gives us insight to a Steve Spurrier. We like John because of the insight he gives us into the sports world. We like John also because he's going to give us insight into Pat Summitt. We have a situation in which the Lady Vols program is far from what it was. How much blame should Pat Summitt carry for that in the face of her terrible, terrible disease, dementia, for where the Lady Vols are now? John, I wanted to ask you this question as much as learn anything about it, because you covered them very, very closely at the time throughout your career. How did that end, and how could it have ended better?
There was no way that would have a happy ending. And no, Pat Summitt had nothing to do with the decline. It didn't matter. If Pat Summitt hadn't become ill, she would still be coaching. And I think probably in her last few years, even maybe she wasn't as sharp as she was previously. She might have been in the beginning stages of Alzheimer's, but Pat Summitt, not at her best, is still better than 90% of the coaches out there. She recruited very well right there in her final years. She recruited well enough. But no, that had nothing to do with the decline. You could say, here was an issue. She was going to have to retire. And this was a very delicate, had to be handled very delicately, because Pat, she wasn't at her worst then, but she had lost a lot, and she was struggling with a horrible illness. And when she resigned, the only move Tennessee could make, the only one to manage this delicate situation, would be to make Holly Warlick her assistant to coach. You had to do that. In fact, Holly, in her last year as assistant, was kind of helping manage the team already. She had a lot on her, a lot of pressure. So that way, you could say, how could this have ended better? You could have said, well, if Pat Summitt, but it wasn't her position to say it, but if she would have said, we need to go out and get the hire, and given her blessing hiring the best coach possible, but Tennessee wouldn't have done. I mean, it's not like Tennessee. Kim Mulkey was a huge fan of Pat Summitt. She loved Pat Summitt. Some of the things she does, I think she learned from Pat Summitt, her approach to coaching. But Tennessee wouldn't have paid Kim Mulkey enough money to leave Baylor. So the transition had to go the way it went.
So you're saying that Kim Mulkey would have, not to interrupt you, Caleb, but Kim Mulkey would have taken the position at Tennessee had it offered?
No, Tennessee wouldn't have paid her enough. But I think I had another coach. I asked him this question, a veteran SEC coach. I said, do you think Kim Mulkey would leave Baylor for Tennessee? And he said, I think if you offered her enough money, you would get her attention.
Interesting.
Now, it wouldn't be like a homecoming going back to Louisiana. She's a Louisiana native. She grew up not that far from Baton Rouge. It wouldn't be the same. But I do think if there were any other job she might have considered, it might have been Tennessee, because of the affection she had for Pat Summitt, the respect she had for Pat Summitt. I think she might have considered that. Whereas most coaches would be afraid of following a legend, Mulkey wouldn't have been. She would have said, man, I want to continue what Pat Summitt built. So, yeah, but we know this isn't just about women's basketball. How many times have you seen Tennessee hiring a coach in any sport where he goes out does a Scott Woodward at LSU, or what he did at A&M doesn't always work out, Jimbo Fisher, but go out and get the biggest name coach he can and spend all the money in the world on them. And that's not how Tennessee is operated.
Yeah, John, the disease was bad, and you're right. There was no. I will give you this. There was no way they could handle the disease because, one, I think we all agree, Pat Summitt was probably coaching for at least 2 full seasons before she knew she had the disease too, and that was unfortunate. No one can blame her. Can't blame the administration or anybody like that. I wanted to go a little bigger picture though, because beyond just the disease, I feel like Pat Summitt's commitment to a certain era of women's basketball and refusal to update was already proving costly. I mean, to get, mixing the series with UConn, I get her principle on that, but you got to understand the room and where you're at with women's basketball. And that hurt Tennessee way more than it hurt UConn in recruiting, mixing that series. And she was so committed to the whole, as college basketball was, the women's game was becoming more fluid, more guard oriented, more 3-point shooting. She stayed committed to the inside game and defense the whole time. And honestly, if not for landing Candace Parker, she doesn't win a national championship the last 14 years she's head coach at Tennessee. So I feel like before even the disease, she let elements of the game pass her by that I do think pushed the Lady Vols behind. And I know I hate to say that now, but is that fair to say?
Well, I get your point. And I always thought that Pat wasn't a great offensive coach. She was a great coach, but I think her strengths were not offense. I think Gino Auriemma was a great offensive coach, but they were both great coaches. They did it different ways. But here's the thing, Caleb. You said she didn't win it until she won 2 national championships because she had Candace Parker. Well, she won 3 because she had Shamiqua Holesclaw. And here's the crux of it is she would get a Candace Parker. She would get a Shamiqua Holesclaw. People wanted to play for her. She was an incredible recruiter. And just when she showed up, her status and her long history in the sport. I mean, there's a statue of her over there for a reason. She would have always attracted that kind of player. And she had a top recruiting class in the country, even when she was probably in the early stages of the disease. So she would have always gotten the players, and she was a tremendous recruiter. So I I think she would have adjusted. The inside game, if you can get a player like Candace Parker, I mean, Parker could play on the perimeter too. So I still think they would have won. I think Pat, if she would have been 100%, would have seen the way things were going. And I still think, yes, UConn passed Tennessee by, but I give credit to UConn for that during that phase. So it's just, and admittedly, it's really hard for me to criticize anything about Pat Summitt because she was so good at what she did. And she wasn't just an outstanding coach. I haven't been around coaches that had her impact on people, the impact on people that she did. She was just an amazing person, I thought.
John, if you can, we finished that statement, and that was if Pat Summitt didn't get that disease, if she's still the coach at Tennessee and she wins blank national titles, given that the game has changed tremendously. So think about that for a moment. I remind you that portions of the program brought to you by Sports Treasures in North Knoxville, John's neck of the woods, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia, daily updates. Again, go to Facebook and follow them there. Sports Treasures TN, Sports Treasures TN on Facebook, and they'll supply our Brew McCoy autographed helmet. That will go to our March grand prize winner at Hooker's Corner. So certainly check that out. It is in the message board if you would like to join. Just $9.98 a month, plus inside recruiting info. So Pat Summitt would have had what level of success had she remained at Tennessee and never suffered the terrible dementia diagnosis and just been a coach for the remainder of her days till her retirement? The game changed a lot. How many championships does she win in that time period?
I think she'd have won at least 3 national championships. Here's why. The NIL era.
Ooh.
Pat Summitt asked somebody to help fund her program. They do it. I mean, she had that kind of impact on people. People would want to be a part of that. And keep in mind, she wasn't just local. She wasn't just statewide or regional. I mean, she's the person in women's basketball. And because of the way she not only promoted her team but her sport as well. So if Pat Summitt comes to you and said, for us to be successful in this sport, we're really going to have an influx of NIL money, people would have responded. Another thing about Pat Summitt, she was a great salesperson.
Yep. John, you're the greatest. We certainly appreciate it. You're our honorary John. So we'll go ahead and pick up the price for you to join Hooker's Corner, and you might win a Brew McCoy autographed helmet. Or a shirt that says Hooker on the front of it. That's our weekly prize. Our grand prize is the Brew McCoy autographed helmet. What do you think of that?
Can I get one of those Hooker shirts?
I can take care of that. Yes, I'll be at your house in about 45 minutes. Thank you, John.
I won't be here then, but thanks for having me on, guys.
In other words, he just won't answer the door. Thank you, John. John Adams, we go by there. His wife didn't recognize me and my wife. Hadn't seen us in so long. She's like, "Who are you?" Like, my wife's like, "I'm just here to give John some money." What? All right, John.
Well, I screamed at her. I said, What are you doing opening the door and you don't know who it is? Shut the door.
When do hookers give John's money?
Yeah, that could be a hooker. John, great stuff. We appreciate it, buddy.
See you guys.
John Adams. Yeah, I go back to the Steve Spurrier comments, and I think he knows. I think he just absolutely knows that Billy Napier's done, and he's done after this year. To me, that's more than a press conference firing him, Caleb.
Yeah, that I agree. I mean, that is the Florida administration might not back Billy Napier this year because they might try to accelerate the firing because now if Steve Spurrier is not on board. It's funny because Urban Meyer won 2 national titles, but I feel like there's no greater. I feel like if you have the two next to each other, Spurrier or Meyer, who would Florida fans worship more? It's Spurrier, and it's not close, right?
Spurrier or Meyer?
Yeah. I think Florida fans love Spurrier way more.
Definitely.
I think. Does anybody have a stronger voice in Florida history? Is he the number of greatest figures in Florida football history? Is Spurrier number one?
Yeah, and it's ironic too because he's one of those guys that said, "I don't like the media. I don't like doing interviews," and he never would. And now he's on a weekly show. Not that I'm
he likes
bitter.
doing interviews on his own terms.
Exactly. Not that I'm bitter, Caleb. Portions of the program are brought to you by our good friends at Ray Varner Ford. We'll have this day in Tennessee football history. First, let me tell you a little something about Ray Varner Ford.
23 F-150 4x4 Super Cab, $44,992. A 2023 Ford Escape all-wheel drive, $30,952. 2023 F-150 4x4 Super Crew XLT, $54,900. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
All right, let's get to this day in Tennessee sports history, and it's brought to you by our good friend Ray Varner at Varner Ford there in Clinton. It is March the 5th, 2024. So what do we got this day in Tennessee sports history, Caleb?
16 years ago today, Tennessee basketball made history. They set a program record with 27 wins by beating the Florida Gators on the road, 89-86. They came back from 13 down to beat Florida that day, and that clinched them their first outright SEC title in over 25 years.
Wow. Is that still the program record for wins, 27?
No. The program record is that year, but it's 31. They got 31 wins that year. And then second is 30. Okay,
but for regular season, it's 27.
No, they won 28 that regular season. I believe the record.
But they set the record with 27, right?
They set the record with 27. Now, to be fair, I want to say that I believe Tennessee. Let's see, Rick Barnes 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, Rick Barnes won 27 regular season games in 2018, 2019. So yeah, the program record that year was set at 28. Rick Barnes came close in 2018, 2019 with 27. But yes, that was Tennessee's first outright SEC title. That still remains the greatest team in Tennessee basketball history. The Chris Lofton, Juwan Smith, Tyler Smith, Wayne Chisholm. Didn't have a lot of length, but man, they had a lot of experience. And that was those were a bunch of players that loved playing for Tennessee basketball.
They could shoot. Rick Barnes may face his biggest test of the year this week. That's absolutely right. He's got an opportunity to win the SEC, Tennessee, South Carolina, the key matchups, and more. How big is this for Rick Barnes? We shall discuss. You give us 2 minutes. I'll give you Caleb Calhoun, Off the Hook Sports. Stay tuned. More after this.
Sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Check out TristarHatsCo.com. That's the official TriStar dealer. You see it right there, TristarHatsCo.com. If you're on our YouTube platform, please hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't done that yet. And notifications, no matter which platform you're on, we'd greatly appreciate that. And leave us a review on your individual podcast platform. That helps us get to more people. We greatly appreciate it. Again, TristarHatsCo.com, TristarHatsCo.com, and they've got the trucker caps that are fantastic. And right now they have free shipping if you use the promo code HOOKED. So that's pretty strong. Caleb, it's time for us to get to other things that for some reason you have messed up your camera. What have you done to your camera, Caleb? Have
I messed up my camera for real? How?
No, I've got it fixed there for you. You're back. Oh, I got it.
You messed up my camera, Dave.
I think I did mess up your camera, but I fixed your camera. So that means something, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't. This is all your fault.
Okay. And our TriStar Hats relationship is brought to you by our friends at Apex Apparel Group. Look at this. Look at this. I got it embroidered for your company. Spirit wear for a school or group needed. Just call Tyler at 865-919-3001, 865-919-3001, or go to yourapexapparelgroup.com. It's right below yourapexapparelgroup.com. They do it all, and they'll take care of you. Look how sharp my stuff looks. You need to check it out. No question about it. So it is time for 4 Downs, and it's brought to you by our good friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas. Here we go, 4 Downs with Cooper Mays, who just keeps getting in the hot tub, and I can't explain why. Tennessee versus South Carolina, Rick Barnes' biggest test of the year, perhaps. Let's discuss.
4 Downs brought to you by Dynasty Spas, the most comfortable spas made in the United States of America, right here in East Tennessee. Drop in for the all-new showroom in Athens. Dynasty Spas, perfect for all 4 seasons. 4 Downs, presented by Off the Hook Sports.
All right, here we go. And Cooper, what do people need to do to take part in the program?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe. Coop here. First down.
Thanks, Coop. First down is the most important player for the Vols in the Tennessee-South Carolina matchup is?
The most important player for the Vols in the Tennessee-South Carolina matchup is the most important player for them who has been all year, and his name is not Dalton Connect. It is Jonas Adu. That's why they lost the first time to South Carolina, is Adu got in foul trouble.
Yep, I can't argue with that. I think you take him away, it's a different team. I could say Connect or Ziegler, but I think you offer up a lot more creativity with your answer, so I'm not even going to try to argue with that.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Most important player for South Carolina is?
Most important player for South Carolina. Ooh, now that's a tricky one.
And then we'll get to the most important regular season that Rick Barnes has had since when, and what all is on the line for this particular game. And it's more so than just winning the regular season title. So the most important player for South Carolina.
I think it's going to be Talon Cooper, who he barely averages 10 points a game, but he is their best perimeter player, and he wrecked Tennessee last time. And I largely think with Zakai Ziegler being tired, and there are still questions about Dalton Connect's defense. That was what was really called into question against South Carolina too last time. Now he's adjusted defensively since then, but his weaknesses in coming off screens and things like that was really exposed, and that's why Cooper had 18 points last game. South Carolina is going to test that again. So probably Talon Cooper is going to be their most important guy.
What down, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Most important regular season game for Rick Barnes since what? That is third down, brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas. We'll have the answer in 50 seconds. Imagine having the best spas made right here in the United States of America in your backyard. Dynasty Pools and Spas, their showroom is open in Athens right off the interstate. You can stop by and check out the best hot tubs and spas in the market. And then delivery, yes, they can do that to Knoxville or Chattanooga. They've got complete support, spa cover, and chemicals to keep your spa bubbling at its best. They also have pool chemicals as well. Dynasty Pools and Spas, amazing discounts for first responders, military, and even some blemish models that can save you a ton, and no one will ever notice. Mention Off the Hook Sports, get $500 off. Mention Off the Hook Sports, get $500 off. Dynasty Pools and Spas. Go to dynastypoolsandspas.com or stop by that showroom in Athens. dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas. Biggest regular season games for Rick Barnes since?
Ever at Tennessee. Ever. This is for a championship. It's a de facto SEC championship game. It's the biggest regular season game ever at Tennessee. And it beats Gonzaga a few years ago when they were number 1. It beats that.
I won't argue with that. Biggest regular season game for Tennessee basketball since? Not Barnes. Is it 1-2 Memphis? Even though that's not conference, I know that's kind of weird to say, but
that was such a big game. The magnitude of what that meant for Tennessee, though, even just in recruiting, it was so big. But yeah, it's the biggest since then. This is the biggest regular season game for Tennessee since number 2 Memphis, number 1 Memphis. Now, LSU a few years ago was also right up there. They lost that game off a terrible call. That was when Will Wade was at LSU. But yeah, this is the biggest regular season game for Tennessee since number 2 Tennessee versus number 1 Memphis in 2008.
Curious what the spread you've seen on this game, and it's brought to you by BetUS, your college basketball betting home. March is here. Get 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000 plus 10% gamblers insurance. The link is right below. Use the link to get the best deal. What are you hearing on a spread, Caleb?
Pulling up the spread right now. I am not exactly sure what the spread is. I got to go to Wednesday. Give me a second. I'll have a spread for you guys in a minute.
Okay, we can do that
right now.
I don't think that Tennessee has necessarily a dud in them, and if they did, this week would be where you would want it to show up, obviously, and not in March. Or you could argue the first round of the SEC tournament, so you get an early rest out of that. But I don't think this team necessarily has a dud. Right now, I've seen computer projections at a data scribe predicting a 75-68 win for Tennessee. What are you seeing? Anything on spreads there, Caleb?
Spreads I'm seeing are roughly, it looks like, I'm sorry, I'm having more trouble than usual doing this, but yeah, it looks like roughly rough spreads are about Tennessee by like 6, which is kind of odd given the fact that, that's computer data spreads. I'm seeing the same computer data spreads you are, but that just seems like a lot given the fact that South Carolina beat Tennessee at Tennessee earlier in the year. So I wonder.
You know what's funny? It doesn't to me, not because I'm disagreeing with you. It doesn't because Tennessee's a big gambling school and people, the general public. My son, who's in Massachusetts, knows who Tennessee is and Dalton Connect. I think the general public gets behind it, and Tennessee's already behind it. And I think that could push the number up 2 or 3. I think this should be like a 2 or 3 point favorite type of game instead. It's a 6.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. Seeing a 6-point game kind of throws me off a little bit. But it also, I think a lot of people think that a lot of spreads. So remember this, guys, this is very early. A lot of spreads for games, a lot of sports books don't do spreads for basketball till the day of. They don't wait till the day of, and this game is obviously tomorrow. So they're not doing, a lot of spreads aren't out yet. Like, I don't even think BetUS has a spread out right now. So most of these are computer generated.
So basically, I just put you on the spot with no possible correct answers, what you're telling me.
Pretty much. You just tried to embarrass me, but it's okay. That doesn't mean there aren't all spreads, but yes.
Okay, well then let's embarrass me. I've gained like 10 pounds. Does that help?
Oh, sure.
What the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Arch Manning has opted out of the EA Sports College football game. Kudos, Arch Manning. The Manning family is bigger than the video game. They can put some white animated AI dude out there to run around and sit on the bench and do what he needs to do. But Arch Manning, you're bigger than EA Sports, and good for you of opting out of that and demanding more money to be in the game. The Mannings are bigger. The Manning cast is bigger. Good for you, Arch Manning. Why should you just take what EA Sports is willing to give, which is roughly $600? That is a mere pittance to you. I've been told that the Manning family gives $600 a day just to their butler. I don't know that to be the case, but that's what I heard. Joking about that. $600 is nothing to Arch Manning. Good for him for opting out. What do you say, Caleb?
No, I have a huge problem with it. I think this is absolutely ridiculous. And this actually kind of angers me because this is Arch Manning trying to pretend he's above everybody else with this. Like, I don't need the $600. How about just for the guys who want to play the game, who want to play with your name? It's not about the $600. This is Arch Manning. I'm going to say it, and someone has to say it. This is Arch Manning virtue signaling. This is Arch Manning virtue signaling because he said, I want to be all about football, and I don't want to be about this. How much extra work are you doing to opt into this game? Okay?
Your thoughts on the message board. Do you agree with me or Caleb? Now, what is virtue signaling? Can you clear that up for me? Because I'm not sure that I know.
Virtue signaling is taking a stance not for the purpose of affecting change or affecting anything in real life, but for the purpose of making yourself look good. Okay? So, like...
No. Okay. I think this is... Okay, I don't think this is that.
It's virtue signaling. It's virtue signaling. Go ahead and explain why. Go ahead and explain why.
Financial move. I think he said, no, I want... Listen, so there's the $600. Now, a lot of football players, if you're watching football and you play for an SEC school and you're an average player, like let's say a backup right guard, okay, you got your $600 for EA Sports. Don't ask for any more. They're not going to give you any more. But I know for a fact that some players got more. Okay, I can't tell you how I know that, but I know that. So I think Arch Manning was in a very quiet negotiation to get more money, and they didn't give it to him. So they said completely stepped off.
Yeah, but that's, again, how much money is this game supposed to give out before they end up like, they won't be able to make a profit? They got to pay everybody. I mean, this is kind of a union effect. I know they're not unionized, but this is like, we're going to give everybody a flat rate. Some players aren't worth the $600. Some players are. I'm the one who said a few weeks ago, Tennessee should opt out for more money themselves as a program. I don't think this is about money for Arch. I think this is about Arch. This is the same reason he said he wasn't accepting NIL last year, okay? He said he's doing this to focus on the field. He wants attention for focusing and working hard. Spare me. I can't stand it when people fake virtue signal like that, okay? It drives me crazy. Johnny Manziel virtue signaled yesterday with, I'm not going to go take part in Heisman stuff. He knows that's not going to make a difference. He just wants the credit for doing something that seems like the moral stance, okay? He's just saying that. Arch Manning is doing the same thing here. He is just saying this because he wants the attention for saying it, and he wants the credit for saying it. And it's annoying when people do that. It's like when people it's like saying, I don't want to be on the Madden cover because I've got to focus on football, as if that takes extra work to be on the Madden cover.
I'll back you for that. His retort to me didn't carry a lot of water. To be in the NCAA football game does not mean that you're going to suddenly have less focus on football. But business move wise, I think it was a good move. I think it'd be a great move for you to go to Ray Varner Ford there in Clinton.
Welcome to Ray Varner Ford in Clinton, where every turn meets new possibilities and every mile celebrates the cutting-edge innovation within our Ford lineup. Elevate your journey in this new 2023 F-150 4x4 Super Cab, $44,992. A 2023 Ford Escape all-wheel drive, $30,952. 2023 F-150 4x4 Super Crew XLT, $54,900. Local you trust, innovation you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
So, with the Arch Manning thing, the irony is he's probably not worth $600. He's the backup quarterback. he's not worth $600, yet he wants more money. Caleb, is this a little bit silly on his behalf? If nothing else, let's take away the maybe virtue signaling and maybe taking the stance. And my view is it's more of a business decision. He's worth more than that. But is it kind of silly to do this?
Yes, it's silly. Quinn Ewers opted in. Nico Iamaleava opted in. I mean, players worth a lot more that are more high profile opted in. And I'm just going to say this. If this wasn't a Manning, we'd be way more critical. Look at the stuff we're saying about Caleb Williams right now, because Caleb Williams has shirked like every expected responsibility of an NFL draft prospect over the past year. You know, not wanting to do workouts at the combine. We have lit into him as analysts for that. And rightly so. He deserves all of it, right? And if we're going to do that, I'm willing to take on the Manning family on this, because I think this is just garbage that he's opting out of the game.
But let me ask you this. Will we look at this 2-3 years from now like we look at, oh my gosh, his name just escaped, Christian McCaffrey? Will we look at it, Christian McCaffrey skipped a bowl game when we thought it was just awful, and now it's commonplace? Will we look at this as elite players are going to negotiate whether or not they're in the game? There is no union in place like the NFLPA.
If the elite players negotiate whether or not they're in the game, there is no game and there's no money for anybody at that point. And so, I mean, they can take $600 or nothing, because the game, how much can the game pay out? I mean, how much, how much money are they already paying to put these players' names? 6 million, 7 million, something like that? They got to make a profit selling the game, don't they?
You know, the only reason that I think the game is going to happen is because John Madden passed away, and they probably don't have to pay him as much as they used to. Are they going to keep naming that the Madden game? I mean, that
probably goes to Madden's estate, whatever it is. Okay. They probably still have to pay Madden's estate for that name.
It does make you wonder why they suddenly had the funds available. Maybe it was just the push to have the game. But I think that more players are getting more money than you do. I think there are some players that are saying, I would really like to get closer to X amount instead of $600. So if that's the case and there's negotiations going on, I don't have as much of a problem with the Manning family taking this stance. But here's the problem I do have. I just think it's incredibly unpopular. You hinted to that earlier. PR has to be a factor in every decision. Now, that doesn't mean you make a decision to go to the Chargers instead of the Giants, which the Manning family took a hard stance on that. And
I don't blame them for that one.
Okay. But there was a PR backlash of, hey, you look like a Richie Rich kid who wants to pick his NFL school. Why don't you appreciate what you have? Right. There was a PR backlash. This PR backlash to me is more significant than the $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 of dollars you might have gotten from EA. The PR, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. You've heard that term, right? To me, this isn't worth it to hold out to negatively affect your PR. Now, the Giants and Chargers, that's another topic.
That's a career move.
You should definitely take a stand and not worry about PR. This one, I think you worry about PR a little bit more, and doesn't sound like the Mannings have done that.
I think this is what's it called when you think about PR, but the move backfires because you think it'll help your PR, but it hurts it.
Dog wagging the tail, or the tail wagging the dog, tail wagging the dog.
Yeah, they did. See this. I don't think it was about money. As a matter of fact, Anwar Richardson from Rivals reported this initially. He said that Arch Manning will not opt in because he wants to focus on playing football. So this report is out there.
That's just, I've got to stop you there. That's a bunch of BS.
It is BS, but I think that's what the Manning family wants out there. I think that's what Peyton Manning is saying. His nephew is full of BS. I agree. I'm saying Arch is doing this to get out a narrative that he only wants to focus on football. And it's stupid.
Oh, I kind of get you now. It took me a second. I see where you're at, because football's not going very well for him. So now you want to make it look like a focus on football.
That's hot.
That's way different from where I thought you were going. You got me there. You got me there. I'm on board. I don't think it's just a money-making thing. At first I thought, Because let's be honest, if Arch was a starter, if Arch was Caleb Williams going into last season, he would be worth way more than $600 on that video game, right?
He would.
Especially with the name. I mean, he'd be worth arguably 7 digits to be on that game with the name. He's not going to get that. So, all right, I'm with you. Then they're virtue signaling. I learned what virtue signaling was, and I learned that I'm just going to agree with Caleb.
Just an example of virtue signaling, things like when people on political sides say, like, stop racism, or like, support our troops, or that stuff that they put on as bumper stickers on their car, a lot of times that's virtue signaling because it doesn't actually impact change. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, you want to stop racism. Well, what are you doing to stop it? Or you want to support the troops? What are you doing to support the troops? You're just putting the bumper sticker on your car without actually taking a stand, without actually doing anything. That's virtue signaling, pretty much.
Okay. And how about this? And Caleb brings this point up. I'm not going to read his whole quote because it's a little incendiary. But how about the Manning family? Would it look too contrived if they said, we're going to take the $600 and donate it to our favorite charity?
How about just donate it? Don't even make a stand on it. Like, this is what bothers me. It's everything about this is just it's taking a fake stance, and it annoys me because, again, I'm doing this to focus on. Dave, what do you have to do? How does this impede you focusing on football being in the game? What, you have to open it? Like what do you have to do to
It doesn't at all.
It doesn't at all. So he just made this up, and it reminds me of, I don't know if you guys remember this, but about 15 years ago, right after the Saints won the Super Bowl, Reggie Bush and Kim Kardashian broke up, and Reggie Bush was like, I'm breaking up to focus on football. No, y'all just broke up, and you're putting that out there, okay, for headlines to say you're breaking up with her to focus on football. Stop it, okay? You just broke up. If that was the case, why were you dating her to begin with? You just won a Super Bowl. Okay, so I don't like when people say that. Like, I'm doing this to focus on my craft. No, you're not. No, you're not. Like, it's not like, I'm sorry. That just drives me crazy. Arch, this isn't going to impede your ability to focus on football. I can't stand when people take these type of stances. And yeah, the Manning family's probably behind it. I can't imagine Arch is doing this on his own. And I think that this is, Dave, I wanted a little bit of your insight. That's why I wanted to do this segment today. Tell me some things you know about just how insanely out of their way the Mannings go to craft an image of themselves from a PR perspective.
I can tell you somebody that was in a golf tournament with them one time, and in the car, I'm not going to name who this was, but in the car, that there was actually a notebook pulled out of the people that Peyton, this is when Peyton was barely out of college, that Peyton needed to know that Arch Manning had pictures of them and their families, members. And so, to say, hey, Caleb, how's your son or your daughter Loella doing? So you would know all the names so you could sound more engaging. And yes, I do know that was done. And I do know that maybe somebody on our very program, maybe on Wednesdays, maybe was presented with all kinds of hurdles to write a book about Peyton Manning, because Peyton Manning had a book coming out at the same time. Perhaps some people didn't want to talk to him because of said hurdles. So aware of their image, that is the understatement of the history of offthehooksports.com. They are more aware of their image than anybody in the history of sports, perhaps. Other than who I think they rank right up there with Kobe and trying to.
I would have thought Michael was one who
Jordan did too.
Jordan put together the most and Magic Johnson put together the most crafted images. You probably remember now Magic's came tumbling down with his announcement in 1991, but before that he put on an image, didn't he? Very much.
Hey, now Kalen has another point. Yeah, I do think they care about their image, but can I get back to the game for a second? Kalen says, I think he knows his stats on the game won't be what he wants, and he doesn't want the Manning name having a low stat level on the game. It's immature, if you ask me. It is immature, but it's not outside the realm of possibility. What if he's like a big 68, Caleb? That's not crazy.
I promise you, Dave, Kalen is not my burner account. because that's a conspiracy. Kaylin, you think like me, and I didn't even think of that one. That's a good one. Doesn't want the low ratings. Oh my gosh.
I think that's actually more likely than the business that I came up with and the PR virtue.
That's like
he just doesn't want to be a 68.
That's a very whatever you think of him, that's a very Trumpy move. Like when Trump said he's 6'3", 215. Like when he said like he wouldn't want to be in an NBA game because he wouldn't want them to list his actual measurables. So like that wow, I could see that.
Sense. Well, the Mannings are the Mannings. We talked earlier about Rick Barnes. This win would be huge for Tennessee if they beat South Carolina. Then Kentucky comes calling. But with South Carolina, they wrap up the SEC regular season. All that being said, is that remembered fondly if Tennessee gets bounced out in the first couple of weeks of first couple of games, rounds of the NCAA tournament?
Oh, I wanted to think about what this means for Barnes specifically because we've been hearing all year that Rick Barnes has changed his philosophy, that this is a new Tennessee team, that they don't stick to the principles of the past. Haven't we been hearing that, Dave, a lot?
Yeah.
And that's so. What's the thing that's always held Barnes back? He's always, as John Adams says, knocking on the door, does all these great things, and then when the moment comes to raise a banner, he loses, whatever that banner may be. Well, this is his chance to actually beat a quality team to raise a banner. This game on Wednesday will prove if this Barnes team is different than all the other teams or just like every other team he's coached at Tennessee basketball. And some people will come at me and say that, well, Tennessee won the SEC regular season title or the SEC tournament title a few years ago. What you guys are forgetting is they got to the title game and they got to play a red hot Texas A&M team that wasn't good. You know those teams, Dave, that luck into the final game of the tournament sometimes because they get hot.
Yes,
Georgia. Yes, Georgia.
2008, 2007.
Yep, the tornado tournament. Yes, that was Texas A&M in 2022. They got to the national title game. The SEC title game in the tournament from getting red hot. And then they played Tennessee. And Tennessee that was so much better than them that was an easy tournament win. Barnes has never beaten a quality opponent with something big on the line, whether that be an SEC tournament or an SEC regular season title, something like that. This is his chance to do that.
So
at Tennessee.
Because he won the Elite Eight to get to the Final Four. You would consider that a big game at Texas, right?
Yes, but who did Texas beat in the Elite Eight that year? That is a good question, isn't it?
I want to say it was somebody lame like Providence. SC Scout guy says, I think either South Carolina wins this game by 2 points or loses by 15. If Tennessee does fall short in the tournament, what's their Achilles heel? Because I'm beginning to get fixated on one possibility. I don't know why Santiago Vescovi is not the same player that he once was.
I think their Achilles heel is actually just being tired. By the way, Texas beat Michigan State to get to the Final Four, but don't get excited. That was a 7 seed Michigan State team that wasn't that good. So
seems like Michigan State's always a 6 or a 7 seed that we talk about how tough they are and what a difficult out they are.
So this is the thing. This is where I'm at. Barnes has beaten a lot of great teams over the years, a lot of top 25, a lot of top 10, some number ones. He's won some tournaments, gone to the Final Four. When has he ever beaten a really, really good team to achieve a milestone? When has that ever happened?
I can't think of. I mean, you're not talking about a Kentucky win at Rupp, which is big. You're talking about bigger than that. You're talking about more on the line.
I'm talking about more on the line. Championship on the line, something like that.
Yeah, and you're right, Travis. Santi did have a good game against Bama. I don't have an answer for that. You tell me.
It's never happened. That's the thing. It's never happened. Tomorrow, he gets to beat a ranked team on the road for a chance to lift an SEC regular season title banner. Can he do it? If he can, this team is different. If he can't, I don't want to hear anything about how this team is different from any other team in the past.
All right. There we go. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Don't forget our friends at BetUS. The link is right below. You get 125% bonus on your first 3 bets up to $2,000 for Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of